right, Sports Bash on a Monday. It is 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, you can watch the show live on our website, 973ESPN.com. That's where you can see our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick. The podcast is called Coming In for a Landing. Look at that. Got the Cape May Brewing Company hat with a free plug today for those guys.
Yeah, great spot.
Yeah, man. What's happening? How was your weekend?
It's good, man. Other than, if I'm looking rosy red right now, it's because I've been shoveling ice all day. But other than that, doing well.
Dude, you have no clue. I was telling Gil off.
You guys got hammered, huh?
I got hammered, and I was like, all right, you know what I'll do? I'll get out of my car and walk to the house. I slipped on black ice. I think I went 10 feet in the air. Phone went flying. I had to play it off to the neighbor like, hey, Jim, how's it going? I just fell 10 feet in the air, busting my ass. So that was my day. They were warning you, you should shovel your driveway before because it'll be icy. I'm like, Yeah. Then I woke up today and I'm like, I should have done that because it was awful.
Well, let me start with Saturday night and get your take on how much did you, Paul, take from that game against the Nets in terms of it was a very shorthanded Nets team, but did you take anything from that game as this is what stood out and I can move forward with?
Ben Simmons, just his value, especially defensively. Literally, Doc Rivers said it, and if you watch the game, you saw it. As soon as Doc Rivers decided to throw Ben Simmons on James Harden, that ended the game. They couldn't get anything done. And not only just Ben Simmons, I really liked the trio of Ben Simmons, Danny Green, and Matisse Thybulle, and the way they kind of just switched everything amongst the three of them. Because what James Harden did early and what he does so well is he hunts mismatches. So he'll get in a pick and roll with somebody, and he'll if whether it's Seth Curry or whether it's Tobias Harris, he'll attack him off the dribble because he knows those are the guys he can beat. But when it's Ben Simmons, when it's Danny Green, when it's Matisse Thybulle, it's a lot harder to do that. So what stood out to me most is just Ben Simmons, his value on the defensive end. I thought he was outstanding. The strategy Doc Rivers used of not putting him on Harden right away, obviously when the Nets are at full strength, that's something that likely can't be done. He's going to have to cover one of those big three players. But I thought just the way he handled it in the third quarter, and then Joel Embiid, the way he adjusted as well to the pick and roll defense, I thought that's what stood out more than anything was just Ben Simmons wreaking havoc on that end of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the change, and we've talked about this before. Like sometimes, if Ben is ultra aggressive on the offensive side, does that take away from his defense? That's why he picked his spots a little bit more? I mean, how do you read into the way they used him defensively? Is that to get more from him offensively? They have to kind of pick and choose how much they want him to exert.
Yeah, so Doc Rivers said it was energy and it was fouls because obviously James Harden is one of the best ever to draw fouls. He's just so good at it. He's made it an art form. So he didn't want to put Ben Simmons on him right away because he didn't want Ben Simmons to get in early foul trouble and then have to sit. And then also he said it was energy because one thing that Doc liked too in the second half that Ben Simmons did is when they got those stops defensively, when they turned the Nets over, they turned it into points the other direction. And he said that he thought that Ben Simmons looked fresher on that end and was able to put pressure on the Nets because he was, not tired from chasing around James Harden in the second half. So I do think that's a factor. There's the best players in the world can do both, but even guys like Kawhi and LeBron James, they don't want to admit it, but they'll coast on a possession or two to kind of get their steam back and get their energy back up. So it's really difficult to play at such a high energy level on both ends for 40 minutes a game. It's just not really sustainable. It's a really difficult thing to do. Ben Simmons can do it as good as anybody, but I do think at times, you don't want to put him on the top guy defensively because it does take away from him offensively, and it does take a little bit of that, what he's good at, pushing the tempo and getting out in transition.
Yeah, I thought that third quarter was huge. Danny Green knocked down some shots there, too, and he was a little fired up, screaming towards the Nets bench or the ref. One of the two, he was getting fired up. That was a big stretch. But Joel Embiid. So I remember looking after the game going, 33 points. It just didn't feel that way. And it's fun. It's like, wow, 33 points. It was almost a quiet 33. But I thought what stood out to me is the 7 threes early on, popping a lot of threes. It's not something we're used to this season. So what did you think of Joel Embiid's game and the three-pointers as well?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that doesn't – over the years when people say, oh, no, he shouldn't be taking threes, I've never really subscribed to that. I've always thought, like, if he can do it and he's good at it, like, let him do it. Especially this year, he shot the three ball extremely well, so I don't have a problem with it. With that said, I thought it was too many, especially in the first half. I think he took 4 in the first half alone. So yeah, I thought maybe that was too many. He has said in the past, and he said again, if I'm open, I'm going to take it. And they were very open shots. I do wonder he downplayed it, but I do wonder if the knee was a factor. He did obviously hyperextend his knee in that Portland game. So I do tend to wonder if maybe that was part of it. He said he's fine. He's feeling fine. This 2 days off will be a nice rest for him, even though they do have to travel, but will be a nice break for that knee. But yeah, overall, I'm really okay with him taking threes. 7 is probably on the border of too many for me. But if that's the look he gets, I'm going to kind of trust him to do it because he's been that good this year, and because he has shot the three ball at such an exceptional level. I'm going to kind of trust his judgment and say if that's what he saw, that's what he saw, and he took the shots he thought were there.
You were talking with Paul Hudrick. Check out his podcast. Coming in for a landing. He's at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. And, of course, Inside the Sixers, we talk to Paul right here at 3:20 each Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And, Paul, you mentioned in your takeaways the big three, and you got Simmons, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. My question, I guess, is are you ready to put Tobias Harris into the point where you don't need a player upgraded over Tobias Harris? So, like, if you're looking to add another guy, is it just a complimentary guy, or are you still looking for that guy that is better than Harris? Or are you now okay with Harris maybe being that second scorer? Because that's essentially what he is right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a black and white answer for you, honestly, because there are guys out there that I think could like Bradley Beal. Like I don't think that's going to happen. Like, of course, like if there's an opportunity to possibly acquire him, you're going to look into it. I don't know how that happens without giving up Ben Simmons, which I don't know how comfortable I'd be with doing that at this point. But I think that he has been consistent and good enough that I'm not actively. I don't think they need it, I guess I would say. I think, me personally, I would look for a kind of on the margins guy who is, a guy who could definitely make you better, but not enough that's going to like overhaul the roster. We also put out those 9 trade targets, myself, Kevin McCormick, and Jay Blevins, 9 targets the Sixers could have. And the 3 guys I had, I don't necessarily think any of them would take away anything from Tobias Harris, but they could make that starting 5 better, whether it's Kyle Lowry, Victor Oladipo, or Patty Mills. I don't necessarily think it's a guy who would be better than Tobias Harris, but a guy who could maybe offer something that he doesn't, like a shot creator, I think would be big. But do I think they need to go out and get Bradley Beal? Do I think they need to do that to kind of put them over the top? I don't necessarily believe that. I think if he continues to play at this level, which to me is an all-star level, I think he's been that good. I think he should be, if he continues this into the all-star break, he should be an all-star. Him playing like this, I don't think they need to make a big splashy move. I think a couple moves on the margin to improve the bench, maybe add one more shot creator. I think you could contend for the East with this team the way it looks.
I can agree with you on that. And with Tobias, sticking with him, what can you say about his defense? We keep talking about his decision-making offensively and catching and shooting in transition and all that, but there's times where he makes some defensive plays. I'm like, damn, that is not Tobias that we've seen before.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, he's likely never going to be like a first-team all-defense kind of guy, but not being a liability, and he has not been at all this year. I would say his defense has been slightly above average, which compared to your point, bros, when he first got here, it was below average. To put it nicely, he was not a good defender when he got here. Even Doc Rivers has said that. We all talk about, the Clippers Tobias Harris. Doc Rivers said, well, no, this isn't the Clippers Tobias Harris because the Clippers Tobias Harris didn't play defense like this guy that I have right now. And it's made a huge difference when you look at what he can do too. At 6'8", he's big, he's long, he's strong. He moves his feet well to handle, when you don't want him guarding, a smaller wing player or point guard for 30 minutes a game, but can he do it if he's forced into a switch? Yeah, he can do it in certain situations. We've seen, some possessions where he's looked really good. Like there was the Lakers game stood out when he got switched on to Anthony Davis in one spot and he shut him down. It was really good help defense by the Sixers as well. But I think that's the other thing is the team in general, I think, is playing better help defense, and their rotations defensively have been so much better. And I think that's helping everyone look better defensively. But Tobias Harris has been really good on both ends of the floor. He's been invaluable. He really, and Joel Embiid said that to us on Saturday. He said, I think he's an all-star because we're not the best team in the East. We don't have the number 1 seed right now if we don't have Tobias Harris. He has been that good. And defense, man, that's something he has really worked on. And you have to give him a lot of credit because, again, he was not that guy when he got here. But he has come to a point where not only is he not a liability, but he's actually helping on that end in a big way.
To me, you could just see how much more aggressive and confident he is. Like, he gets the ball and almost knows right away, I'm putting it on the floor, I'm going to pull up from the elbow, where before he would catch it and really not know, do I want to put it on the floor? Do I want to pull up here? Like, he just seems like, for whatever reason, he seems more comfortable and confident. Now, off of that, you guys have 9 trade targets for the Sixers. You can check that out at 97.3ESPN.com. You have 3. Blevins has 3. McCormick has 3. Of your 3, do any of them, Oladipo, Patty Mills, and who was the third one? Was
Kyle Lowry.
Kyle Lowry. Do any of those 3 involve Ben Simmons?
No.
Well, Patty Mills definitely would not.
No.
Could you imagine?
I would not trade Ben Simmons for any 3 of those players. There are very few players I would even entertain trading Ben Simmons for. Like, frankly, that's my personal opinion. I think he's too valuable, and I think he still has so much more to give. He still has upside that I think can be untapped. So for James Harden, I thought about it, but for it has to be that level though. It has to be a superstar player for me to even entertain it. The 3 guys you talked about that I mentioned that I put in the article, you could do any of those without including any of the bigger names. Danny Green might be, and even Danny Green, like I'm not in a hurry to trade him because I think he's been pretty darn good for them. I think he's been an unsung hero. He's a solid defender. When he's hot from 3, he's really hot from 3, and he's just smart. He's a smart veteran player. Now, if I can get a Kyle Lowry or a Victor Oladipo, yeah, Danny Green, so long. Like, I would do that in a heartbeat. But yeah, at the price of Ben Simmons, no way. I think, if anything, and I mentioned in the article as well, a guy like Lowry, a guy like Oladipo can help Simmons because, to add that supplemental ball handling, not to say that Simmons can't do it, but it would be, you've seen what just Seth Curry, the ability to put the ball on the floor for him, what that's done for Ben Simmons and how that's opened things up. So imagine you get another guy out there like an Oladipo or a Lowry that can handle the ball, run the offense, run a pick and roll with Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. It just makes you that much more dangerous. And so those, to me, that's the upgrade, is trying to find maybe another guy in that starting 5 to upgrade possibly from Danny Green. But again, I'm not in a hurry to do that because I think Danny Green's been pretty darn good. I think the starting 5 is 13-0 now. So I'm not in a hurry to do that. But if that was a possibility, I would entertain it.
Yeah, you're looking at big picture and you're wondering, it's like the Sixers with Iverson. They had Theo Ratliff, but they felt, okay, it's a good regular season team, but we need Dikembe Mutombo to really make the run. You wonder if the Sixers are kind of there. This is a good team. It could be the number 1 seed maybe, but is this a good enough team to be the number 1 seed and get to the finals? I think that's where they're at right now.
Yeah, I agree. And not only that, when you look at Joel Embiid and just the gear he's having, an MVP caliber type season at 26 years old, we all know the injury history. We all know the history of big men in general. I mean, credit to him because he's really taken care of himself. He's done a really good job with that. I think he's in the best shape he's been in since he's been an NBA basketball player. So that will only stand to help him as we go forward. But I think capitalizing on his greatness right now is also got to be a factor. And again, you get a guy like Lowry who just won a championship, who is just so tough, got that bulldog mentality, does so many little things to help you win. And could just do a little bit of everything. I worry about the size of that front court, but that could be the kind of move, Mike, that I think could put you over the top. Or again, Oladipo is just he's not quite the player he was when he ruptured his quad, but he's slowly but surely kind of getting back there. And I look at him as just an upgrade over Danny Green as far as he can handle the basketball. His shot hasn't quite come back to form, but he can shoot. And defensively, he would be an upgrade too. Victor Oladipo, to me, when he is healthy, is one of the better two-way guards in the league. So to add a guy like that to the mix, I think, yeah, that's the kind of move you're talking about that puts you from, hey, we can maybe hang with the Nets and the Bucks to, okay, now we definitely have a shot to knock one of them off.
Yeah, and obviously this Nets team didn't have KD, didn't have Kyrie, but watching some of those players log in a ton of minutes, did that really show you how thin they are with TLC, Norvell Pell, Tyler Johnson? I mean, we knew that
Tyler Johnson
I could
played
not believe
72 minutes.
I could not believe he was still playing basketball.
They were the process Sixers.
It was ridiculous.
It was.
And, like, we're not surprised knowing that
Horrible.
they're that thin, but wow. Did that put it in perspective for you?
Yeah, you know what? It kind of reminds me of a couple years ago, the Sixers make those two trades for Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. And yeah, their starting five was great. I think going into the playoffs, they were the top starting five in the NBA. But then the problem was they had no depth. Their only two reliable bench players were James Ennis and Mike Scott. And they didn't have a good their backup center situation was a dumpster fire. So yeah, when you make big trades like that, it does cost you. Like, look at Jared Allen, I think is really good, and I think going to be really good. You kind of see already how good he's been in Cleveland, and how good he was for the Nets. I thought he was a perfect fit for them, and losing him and now having to play DeAndre Jordan big minutes, and to your point now, Norvell Pell, who I love Norvell Pell, great dude. He's a pretty good player, but like for a championship caliber team, for him to be your backup center, that's not a great spot to be in. I know they just signed, purportedly just signed Noah Vonleh as well. But no, Vonleh, I mean, he's fine, but there's a reason why Noah Vonleh was still out there.
He stinks.
Their depth is brutal. And I think, for the Sixers, and not only that, bro, on top of that being brutal now, what pieces do they have to add to that depth? They don't have much. The Sixers are in a really advantageous position in that they have tradable contracts. They still have that taxpayer mid-level exception to maybe lure a buyout candidate. They have a trade exception of $8 million from the Al Horford deal. So they have flexibility to make a move that perhaps the Nets or the Bucks do not.
I know it's tough, but watching the game, can you kind of project the Sixers matchups now after you saw them with Brooklyn, or is that kind of hard to do?
It's hard to do without KD and without Kyrie because my instinct
Ben would be
tell
jumping
me,
all over the place, I feel like.
Yeah, what about Thibault? Would he get in the mix on some of these guys defensively?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he'd have to.
Yeah,
he'd have to.
for some good
I could
minutes.
see him actually sticking Kyrie a lot because I think I could be mistaken, so please don't bash me if I'm wrong. But I feel like Matisse has done, when he's guarded Kyrie, has done a pretty decent job against them. So I'm sure you'd see him in the mix. And, Danny Green will probably – it's like the starting five is fascinating because I'm kind of intrigued by who would cover who. My guess would be Ben Simmons covers Durant just because of that length. And, Kevin Durant's ability to just shoot. Ben Simmons almost has to guard him. So then Danny Green likely gets Harden. And then I guess Seth Curry gets Kyrie, which is not a great matchup. So, yeah, I do. It's fair to wonder how they would match up. But then again, we talk a lot about that. How our team's going to match up against the Nets firepower. Well, how the hell are the Nets going to match up against the Sixers? You can't DeAndre Jordan against Joel Embiid for 40 minutes. Who's going to guard Ben Simmons in that starting five? Who's going to, who's going to guard Tobias Harris? It's not an easy matchup the other way either. So, I still want to see that matchup. I still want to see both teams at full strength, and that will give me a better indicator. I don't think Saturday. I don't think you got enough of a big picture of what that matchup would look like.
He's Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. The podcast is coming in for a landing. Make sure all you Sixer fans check that out, and of course, Inside the Sixers right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. It's Sixers tomorrow night out west against the Kings. So a couple of late nighters right here on 97.3. Sixers, Blazers, Suns, Kings, Blazers, Suns, and the Jazz. So a little 4-game roadie, and there you go. You can hear those games all on 97.3 ESPN. And he